When did we start to obsess ourselves with authenticity? Authenticity, which means, in this context, kind of like being your true self, being your true self. And now that nobody really communicates unless it's through this kind of channel, that means not really just being yourself, but selling yourself. Monetizing your inner self, your personality, your character. What a funny world we live in when that's all there is left to do, to monetize your personality. But there you go. So when did it begin, this authenticity obsession? Not that long ago, actually, in the last 20, 30 years. So, and it's in parallel with the rise of this idea of basic individualism. As Margaret Thatcher said, there is no such thing as society. There are only individuals. This is a very new concept, a very new idea. Why do we have to be ourselves in public? Why do we have to take our private selves into our public life and reveal ourselves at every opportunity? Why do we consider that this is some form of progressive idea, really? Something that's positive, something that's actually essential for ourselves? Well, I don't have the answer. It's something to do with the fact that we are so in love with ourselves, we now have to worship ourselves as individuals over and above anything that's happening around us. So, for example, self-love, self-affirmation has replaced things like duty and sacrifice. That would be one example of why we are turning towards authenticity of the personal brand being at the heart of our lives. So we go into the world now, or as nobody goes into the world now, we are on social media and we are there to sort of churn our insides up and display them in public. Why the hell would anybody really be interested in that? It really must be prurience. It must be some kind of almost perverse enjoyment in watching other people's turmoil to some extent. It makes us feel that we are in a better place than other people. That's always quite important. I don't know. But this idea is new. So what used to happen is that outside of our private sphere, our homes, our inner workings, there would be a public persona that we would take into the outside world. Now, it might sound a bit weird, but actually it makes a lot of sense. Imagine the public sphere, the public marketplace, and you arrive there and you arrive almost a sort of you're a neutral being in a world of ritual, of almost poetic play. And this is the starting point of a society. It would include things like playing some sort of game of politeness, for example, following certain social rules. You negate many of your feelings in the public sphere and you present yourself with a public face. And we all do this to some extent, of course, but the boundary that used to exist has now pretty much disappeared. Although I don't think any of us could say that we take our private life into our public space. For example, I don't normally sit up straight. I'm normally lying on the bed. I don't normally wear a button-up shirt. I tend to wear a t-shirt. So even I don't even wear glasses normally, but I'm wearing glasses for certain reasons. So in a way, I'm kind of still presenting myself in a slightly different public way, and that's just how things work. But I'm still expressing my kind of inner feelings in this space, which we wouldn't really have done before. Yes, we would talk about the important things. We would talk about society. We would talk about politics. We would talk about law. We would talk about illness. Yes, those things would be discussed, but not from a personal point of view. Everything now is from that first person point of view. So really, what I want to talk about then is the fact that I think this authenticity is it's a lie, really. The idea that you should be your authentic self at all times. Think about it. You can present yourself in the public sphere in a way that doesn't portray yourself just because you are presenting a public face, a face maybe, of dignity. You're standing up straight, as Jordan Peter would say. You are not kind of revealing your inner sanctum immediately to anybody who will listen in order to get some kind of affirmation that you exist as a kind of, soiled individual. It doesn't mean to say that you kind of live a life full of secrets and that kind of thing, but this is all related as well to the endless positive affirmations. You have to be this, you have to be that, you have to live, what is that thing? Live, love, laugh. It's almost as if anything else other than endless positive thinking, and living that kind of perfect life is unacceptable, actually. I would go that far. But this idea, of course, isn't really mine. It comes from a guy called Richard Sennett from a book many, many years ago. I think it was in 1973 or something. And it was called The Fall of Public Man. That the idea that we would kind of share a kind of polite society that would not indulge ourselves the moment we walk out the door and speak to anybody, but would follow certain kind of framework, and that, yes, if we were invited to share, that obviously that's fine. But just to go out there and reveal all to everybody as part of a campaign of searching and demanding that we be authentic all of the time was completely alien. It just simply didn't happen. Now, I can see, obviously, this is a very contentious issue, and that there's some people would say, well, thank God that, that we are able to endlessly reveal ourselves at every opportunity. But there you go. So we're carrying ourselves everywhere we go. There is no respite. And in fact, we're encouraged to kind of, even spice it up a little bit, to be honest. We might appear to be boring if we haven't got some thing to share of ourselves, which is dramatic, or there is some form of crisis, because we feel that is the only important thing in our lives, really. And unfortunately, other people really don't give a damn, except for prurience. But anyway, because we have to carry ourselves all the time, wherever we go, because there is no respite from it, I think that we're just adopting coping strategies for getting through. We can't ever relinquish the pain and that we feel. We can't let it go. even for a while. And so we are just, life has become just a series of coping strategies. Coping. I mean, how do we cope with it? Well, obviously we cope with it because we are constantly looking for affirmation. Basically, we are constantly looking for messages and signs and signals that we should carry on. Get out of bed, keep going, get it done. As Samuel Beckett said in that play, Waiting for Godot, I can't go on, I'll go on. And it's a bit like that. I can't go on. You get a Facebook post or whatever, and it just says, keep going, you're doing well. It's about keeping going. It's searching for strategies to cope and to keep carrying on as we drag ourselves into a new day, and we drag ourselves into the public forum, having to be our authentic selves there, instead of leaving our authentic selves on the back burner in the public forum, being able therefore to communicate in this kind of shared mutual way where there is mutual understanding of how the public forum operates, and it doesn't operate by people having to kind of reveal themselves, sell themselves, monetize themselves. And I think so I think it's just about trying to cope. And the coping strategies are things like, obviously, they're things like distraction. Distraction is the main coping strategy. The number of people I know, including, myself to some extent, who as soon as they stop doing something, find themselves in a void of horror, alone with themselves just for a second, sitting on that chair in that empty room with nothing to do. It's the most terrifying thing on earth. So, distracting themselves. People can't be bored now for 30 seconds. This is one way of avoiding it. The other way is to kind of tie yourself and your beliefs to some kind of form of institution. It could be religious, it could be, I don't know, it could be a family thing, it could be to do with work, or it could be to do with, football supporting, who cares? The point is that you kind of find some form of institution to which you can kind of hang your hook, and that will drag you along quite happily. There's also something called sublimation, which is where you kind of have a glimpse of the awkwardness of being alive, and you try and twist that or turn that into something which is artistic or has some positive influence. But often it's turning it into a form of art. And looking backwards is also being nostalgic, wallowing in the past. Again, is a way of avoiding the present, because, the present is very, very tough. And because we have to carry our authentic selves wherever we go, because there's no place now where we can let go of it, and just sort of play. It's kind of a role you're playing, isn't it? It's role playing in a play which has been formed for the good of everybody, and which everybody understands their lines. As I said, it can come down to simple politeness, genuine just kindness, respect, just these simple things, quietness, listening.